And we're back, June 26, 2025. Another episode of the Post Republic here with Tyler and Silas. I'm Adrian, and
Hello.
it's been a wild 2 weeks. Boy, we picked quite the week to take a show off. So there's a bit to catch up on if you want to give us the rundown there, Tyler.
Well, I mean, we pretty much had an entire war. Trump is calling the 12-day war. Trump drops the bunker busters on the nuclear facilities in Iran, but also ends up calling a ceasefire. And as of now, I think both countries are respecting the ceasefire for now. We also have Zoran Mamdani wins the New York mayoral primary in a ranked voting primary, paving the way for him for probably the first full-on Muslim mayor of New York City. We also have Diddy. P. Diddy is being acquitted, apparently. We also have hearings on Biden's auto pen controversy, seeking to find out who was authorizing those signatures. We also have Trump. Trump endorses AOC and Jasmine Crockett for a 2028 presidential run. Oh yeah, let's go. I do have a clip I was going to show just to kind of give the rundown of everything that's happened with the Israel-Iran conflict. I'll pop this on real quick. Let me share my screen. All right, this is pretty much in a nutshell.
Well, welcome to Smart Tech. What can I,
Is
what can I
this your
help
boy?
you?
Yeah, nigga, we will both mash you. What?
Hey,
What?
how can we
Where you
help
at?
you, sir?
No, he don't need no help. He's already been served. I served him. He's taken care of. He's a little slow, but he got it. See, what he thought was he could come up in here and make the rules, but now he see that Jay make the rules in Smart Tech. That I run this bitch, and now he about to bounce.
This your boy?
Yeah, that's my boy, nigga. We rep the same Smart Tech.
You just got fucked up with him. Both y'all niggas gonna get clapped up when I get back. Both of y'all niggas.
What did I do?
It don't fucking matter.
Yeah, well, aim high, Willis. Aim high.
Please don't.
That's pretty much in a nutshell what's going on. So I mean, it's been a couple of weeks. What are your thoughts, Adrian? I mean, I know there's a lot to go through. Last we left it, Israel had just conducted its first bombing on Iran, and then everyone freaked out, rightfully so. And then Trump joins, and actually, because Israel had been requesting the bunker buster bombs because that was the only way to blow up the nuclear facilities, and Trump actually, in a huge show of strength and courage, decided to drop those bombs on those nuclear facilities. Kind of the most significant military operation, and I don't know, in recent years, at least from a U.S. standpoint. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are. I know a bunch of other stuff happened as well.
Well, yeah, it was quite a ride. Both like collectively seeing the freak out, the responses, and for myself, because there was a period there where I was really resisting the black pill. I was like, God, Trump's betraying a lot of what he said, and getting into that because I'm like, yeah, I don't want to start a full-on war. I don't want to do this. And there was a lot of freakouts the libertarians basically just like, oh, Trump's bad. Dave Smith's epic fail, I would say, of like, I said it, I don't post that often on Twitter, but I was like, that is like the gayest moment of his life, to go on Crystal Ball Breaking Points and be hysterical and saying he needs to be removed from office. And it's like
calling for impeachment.
Yeah, and like, look, man, if you're under the assumption, you're like, this is basically we're gonna invade, we're gonna do all these things, He's betraying blah blah blah. But it's like this is not the Iraq War. I was, in the fog of war, there's so much that is tossed around about, World War III. They've been saying this forever with Iran, um, and just the freakouts of what's going to happen, what the consequences of this are.
Mm.
And I think, to some extent, the reaction, it's understandable. I mean, I was certainly having it myself. Um, but at the same time, it's like, look, when Soleimani was taken out, people had similar reactions. Like, and I was reminded of that, and I was like, okay, like, just try to take a step back as much as you can and just see what's going to actually transpire, because people get into these purity spiral situations where it's like, oh, well, Trump's a total fraud. He's like totally bought out by Israel. And to be honest, I was questioning that.
Me too.
Because, well, yeah, what is the benefit to us? Like, well, how is this going to play out? And we could get into like the specifics of all that, but really, it was incredible to witness in terms of both the spectacle of like people freaking out, and then also like how quickly it just, as of now at least, seems to not be accelerating into like a worst case scenario. um but yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, I'm just trying to put it all into perspective because yeah, there's a lot of people. And actually, I was listening to a podcast, and I really recommend this guy Pete Quinones. He's a little bit more. He's more on the dissident right of things, and he's very much opposed to Israel and a lot of different things. But he was saying how there's a lot of ex-libertarians who've. I mean, you could probably, like, a lot of the J-pilled uh, people have a libertarian streak in the sense that they purity spiral on this one issue. Um, and it is a big issue, but I think it's reductive to just say, oh, Trump and even the United States as a whole are completely and totally bought by Israel. Like, I don't think that's accurate. Um, I do think that the Zionist lobby and Israel lobby has a lot of influence for sure.
Hmm.
Probably more than any other foreign entity, to be honest. But it's not as simple as just the Zionists run everything. This is all an op. It's all scripted. Trump's completely bought, and we already know what the outcome is. And that's kind of like the Fuentes Groiper perspective on it. I did think it was interesting that, like, that streak of like purity spiraling is similar among libertarians as it is among like kind of ex-libertarians or people in that space, where it's easy to just dwell on the Jews and Israel, and it's like, well, there's more in play here, and I think how it played out with Trump really shows that.
Well, and you have the purity spiral happening in three different ways. I mean, the left does it all the time, but you also have the MAGA purity spiral too. If you don't trust Trump, if you ever question him, then you're dead to us, kind of thing, which is more the camp that I'm in. Because I'm just a diehard Trump person. I just really trust him. He's the only politician I've ever trusted. And I'm not saying I trust him completely, fully, blindly, without ever asking questions, but to the highest degree that I could possibly trust a politician, that's the type of trust that I have in Trump.
Yep. I think for some reason I had trust in what he was doing. And there's definitely a lot of people that would say that there's a deal made with both countries even before the bunkers. And um, I think it has been reported that Trump gave warning that they're going to do a strike, get in and get out, and that they didn't want regime change, and that they basically were going to take out specific sites. Maybe he didn't even say which sites, but they could assume the main centrifuge sites or whatever.
Hmm.
So they got uranium out, as we've found out now, and so I think that was part of the deal. They both struck back after the ceasefire to show they're each country like we're gonna fight for our people type of thing. So it felt like a show, um, but I do still for some reason trust Trump and what he's doing because I think he's the bottom line is he's a deal maker. So he's making all kinds of deals we're not aware of.
That's my favorite thing about him, and my least favorite thing about him is that he's willing to make deals with pretty much anybody. I mean, the guy
Yeah.
will make a deal with the devil pretty much to.
Well, I mean, that is the only way forward. I think I've talked about this before is like if you came in and you weren't making deals with the dark side and the gray side and all that, you wouldn't be able to make the bigger moves, basically.
Well, that's that's like real politique.
Yes.
That's like
Yeah.
you know being actually utilizing power within the bounds that's in front of you. And the like I was saying with the J pill people, it's they're basically like, well, unless we completely get rid of the Israel Zionist influence, then everything else is pointless. And it's like, well, that's a power structure. It exists. And I don't think Trump himself is like an outright Zionist. I think he's just like making deals because he understands the certain power players, and he's not gonna, and be realistic. Like within the relative terms of the Overton window. Like, yeah, you're gonna have to make some compromises and also do it in a way that still gets you what you want as much as you can. And I think he is much more skilled at that than the initial reaction, and that was pretty obvious with how the 12-day war played out. Is that I do think there was, I don't know to what extent it was scripted. I think it did feel a lot of the, especially once it started to wind down and Iran was saying, "Oh, we're going to launch a missile at the U.S. base," but it was similar to Soleimani. They did the same thing, and like no soldiers were hurt. They gave advance warning. It sounds like the U.S. kind of gave advance warning, like you're saying, Silas, to Iran about that. We're going to save face. We're going to. I'm sure they did set back that enrichment program because there are reactors down there. So like, if that's destroyed, then there is some. If you're concerned with that, then that is it did do something, but it's not like it was kind of that middle road that Trump is walking, that fine line where he knows, according to how our alliances are, we kind of he's like, all right, I'll back you up, Israel, but that's it. And then this is done, and you saw that with the reaction he had the next day. Like, I don't know what the fuck they're doing.
They don't know what the fuck they're doing.
They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because he was very much like scolding Israel, and then I think it was yesterday he came out with like a glowing post about Netanyahu, like his trial, which I don't I don't really like Netanyahu at all, but I almost, the reaction is like, oh, look at Trump's just bought and paid for by Netanyahu. But it's also like playing that game again where he's like, I'm going to scold you, then I'm going to praise you. Like, there's a certain element of, like, he's still making deals both with Israel. Like, he's going to say, set the line, but he's also going to be like, but if you're friends, I got your back. And you can debate whether that's, if whatever with Netanyahu, again, because I don't like Netanyahu. I have my issues with a lot of shit that he does, but just looking at it from that strategic perspective, it's again like you have to analyze Trump, not literally, but you have to take him seriously in terms of like, this isn't just the surface level. Trump's erratic and he's all over the place. Like, not as much as you think, by any means.
Well, I'm a huge proponent. I'm glad you said realpolitik. I'm a huge proponent of realpolitik. It's just the art of the possible. That's basically what politics really is the art of the possible. And I think you see, so Trump is not ideological. And so a lot of the freakouts that we saw over the last week or two was people who were more ideological. And people who are ideological, whether it's on the left or the right or the libertarians or the J Pill crew, they're very ideological. They have certain same thing with like Massey. Massey is a good example of somebody who's ideological, right? He will not budge from this specific principle or whatever, principles. Um, but Trump is the anti ideologue. You know, he's not an ideologue. And this is why he's so successful in politics, is because he has a very firm grasp on politics, as in realpolitik, as opposed to ideologue politics. But his unpredictability or madman strategy to foreign policy works really, really well. So he combines unpredictability with the credible threat of violence. That's how you achieve peace through strength. And I was just happy. I mean, just take away. If I just sit here and I take away Iran, Israel, all that stuff, I wanted to see a show of strength. I wanted to see some sort of event or action from Trump that messages to the world, we are not messing around. And if you want to get froggy, we will start dropping bombs. And I know that sounds a little bit warmongery, but I love the way that Trump did it because he was able to do it without killing anybody.
Yeah,
He was actually
exactly.
able to do it without putting boots on the ground. In my opinion, you know, this whole episode, really, we got a lot out of it. The way I see it is that Israel was actually kind of doing our work for a change. We were able to take out the nuclear facilities, and we, you know, there it's dubious or controversial on whether or not they were actually how close they were to making a bomb, or if they actually were making a bomb or whatever. But 80+% of Americans agree that, and this is the dichotomy of the situation. Talking about realpolitik and democratic politics, is that 89% or 85% roughly Americans agree that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. Now, you could disagree with it. We could argue about that stuff. I'm not making a claim. I'm just saying that 89 or 85% of Americans do not want Iran having a nuclear weapon. But the exact same percentage of people do not want boots on the ground and do not want to get involved with an actual war. So those two things are kind of in tension with each other. So how do you achieve the one and not fall into the other? And I think Trump demonstrates again, not only that he's in control, not only that he has the credible threat of violence, that he is willing to do what is necessary, but he's also achieving the goals that the American people want without having to get involved with some sort of forever war, Middle East boondoggle.
Yeah, I think it's great. He showed the strength through peace, but had restraint. You know, I think that a deal was made in that 60-day period, and that was probably the whole talk. Is we got to show our countries that we're gonna be strong for them, but we will restrain ourselves and come to a resolution at the same time. So I think the peace through strength type of idea is starting to play out in real world events besides just America.
Well, Savage American agrees with me. I don't know what he was saying agreed to, but I'm just going to assume that he's agreeing with me.
No, he's agreeing with me.
I think it was what I was saying earlier.
Specify.
So
Seth.
you think a deal was made with Silas? You mentioned you think there was a deal that was made to maybe get people out of the nuclear sites before they
not
dropped
only
those
that,
bunker
but
busters.
I think like Iran pretty much would have told Trump, like, we can't make a deal with you. You know, my people would, you know, pretty much react in a way. I think it's 50-50 there of who support Ayatollah and who don't. But and maybe even his own image, he didn't want to look like he made a deal with Trump, like he came to the White House and, you know, just that whole scenario. So the deal was Trump was going to announce that a deal wasn't made to show that Iran their strength in that way, and then um, do the bunker busters as a precision strike and not do regime change or
Mm.
try and get boots on the ground to occupy the place.
Well, No Agenda, I don't know if you guys have listened to them much, but they talk a lot about, and they said this during Soleimani, actually, that Iran and the U.S. Work together, sometimes covertly, for these very means. Like with Soleimani, it was basically their theory, at least, is that Iran actually wanted to take him out, that he was becoming an issue, maybe too influential, and so the U.S. took him out both to look, like, look, we took out this top general, and Iran's like, oh, how dare you? I'm gonna shoot rockets into the desert, and but then they're like, yeah, good job.
Yeah.
Like, and when you see how this plays out with the 12-day war, it has that air of, like, it does, and you kind of saw it too. I don't know if China and Russia were tipped off. Maybe they weren't. But back channels, the intelligence probably is like, look, this is not gonna be what you think or people are freaking out about. This is something that's playing out for whatever the overall reason is for both sides. Um, you know, and I think there's an element of that's this was more controlled, not fully though. I do think there are real factors. I mean, people did die.
Yeah.
It wasn't just bombs to nowhere, and obviously,
Our bombs didn't kill anybody, though, as
right.
far as I know.
Yeah, launched from us. Yeah, um, but
Launched from us, yes.
you
Thank
know,
you for the
because
clarification.
they might have Nikki Haley's signature on the Israeli bombs. We don't know, but at the same time, there is an element when you get into the whole empire talk of the U.S. Um, a lot of people that I've listened to have discussed the element of China in terms of Iran itself and what the strategic benefit is for the United States to either isolate Iran or make them. I mean, if you were able to actually get a regime change without doing a war, I'm not arguing in favor of that, but the argument basically is that, China gets so much of its oil from Iran. If you were able to cut that supply off, like, that's a huge blow to China. Which is why closing the Strait of Hormuz, this seemed like it wasn't, like, this can't actually happen. How does this benefit them?
Yeah.
Um,
Just to try and strangle people, but it's not going to happen.
No.
And I think you're kind of touching on some grand strategy type aspects of this. Is maybe like you said, maybe there was some back channeling with Iran, but at the same time, I'm just happy to have a show of strength, a very strong show of strength, because I really think if Trump can convey that we are still a warring empire, and if you step out of line, there will be consequences. If he can do that with minimal casualties, I'm a fan of it. I think that's what you have to do. But the problem is that it's risky, right? It's like, oh, are we going to get dragged into a regime change type situation? And you guys both mentioned the regime change, and I think one of the important things to kind of remember about this, that I kind of remind myself about, is there everybody's talking about the regime change and not getting dragged into another war because that's what happened in Iraq or Afghanistan. We got tied up in these spreading democracy kind of neocon type of endeavors. But it's important to remember that Iran is not Iraq, and also Trump is not Bush or Obama. So I'm not a proponent of the regime change at this point. I do think that we did what we should have done. We got what we needed. Let's just hang back. If the Iranian people do want to take back their country or something, then I wouldn't want to stand in the way of that. But I wonder, just as a thought experiment, of how a regime change would look
Hmm.
under somebody like Trump. But that's my kind of more thought experiment question. But another point I wanted to bring up is that, everybody started freaking out about Trump doing this. This is not what I voted for. No new wars, right? It was just a huge like war on X, which I have to remind myself X is not real life. Um, it's kind of like a weird funhouse mirror version of real life. But everybody started freaking out. This is not what I voted for, type of thing. Trump has always been a hawk on Iran. He's been saying he doesn't want them to have a nuclear weapon for years and years. I mean, over 10 years at this point. And so, and also Trump has a history of going in with decisive strategic attacks and then just pulling back and not going in full boots on the ground. So I guess the main thing I wanted to say was that everybody's kind of freaking out. It's like Trump is the same person he always was. What kind of delusional mental state are you in that you thought that he wasn't going to drop any bombs, that he wasn't going to do anything militarily, that he wasn't going to, be a hawk on Iran, that he wasn't going to, that he was just going to allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So, it's just a kind of a wake up call for some people, and a little bit of a mask off moment for some of the weaker MAGA types. But
Mm.
they're anti-war, right? So you can't argue with somebody who's anti-war because
Yeah.
they anybody who's anti-war has the moral high ground over you.
Always. Um, so with the thought experiment, I think we are seeing a regime change under Trump before our eyes, and
In Iran.
uh, yeah, and and potentially Israel too, because Israel's similar in in that like it's split. I've heard 50-50 that want Netanyahu in or out.
Mm,
Um, so to resolve future conflicts and show peace through strength, I think both could honorably step down. And I think Trump allowed uranium to be withdrawn because there's going to be some sort of nuclear revolution in a way that all countries will sign an agreement to develop nuclear energy for the coming AI and quantum type stuff, which will like launch us into like things we can't imagine really. So that would be the start of the golden age type of idea, and that's Trump in gold. He wants that to be his legacy. He wants people to like think of his name in gold in all kinds of ways when he passes.
yeah.
Which if he's doing it in this way, that's going to actually bring um, more security through that strength and peace, then I'm for it.
Hmm. Thoughts, Adrian?
I had something I was going to say, and it slipped my mind.
Well, I'm sure it'll come back to you. I was going to say, Trump. One thing I think that Trump is really trying to do is secure his legacy. He doesn't want to go down in history as inconsequential type president. He wants to actually change the world. I think he does want to make the world a better place. I think that he does want peace. I think he wants to be known as a bringer of peace. You know, when you look at his truth social posts, and there was one specifically where he's like, it was almost like a boxing match or something like that. He's like, Israel, you got some good punches in. Iran, you did good too. And I just want to thank both of you for coming in and slugging it out. And now we're gonna live to fight another day, basically, which is really, that this ceasefire is not. Let's be real here. This ceasefire is not gonna last forever.
You know, what's interesting too about people's purity spiraling on Trump, because he dropped the bomb, is that we literally ran out of bombs during Obama. He dropped so many bombs. He dropped, I think, over 26,000 bombs. He literally, and for the party that's screaming it about due process, I'm pretty sure Obama's the only president, to my knowledge, that assassinated American citizens over in, I think it might have been Yemen or um, somewhere over there, Anwar al-Awlaki, and then his
Hmm.
son, which is like even more egregious.
Hmm.
He's just at a cafe or whatever.
Yeah.
But nobody talks about that anymore. Um, and and I'm not trying to do whataboutism here, but when you look at Libya as an absolute disaster, um, after we did all that during Obama. Syria's a shit show, which was initiated under Obama. They really wanted that they really wanted to just take them out sooner. But you see and then obviously you look at Iraq and Afghanistan that was started under Bush, and you compare it to Trump. And yeah, so Trump's, you can say, oh, we're funding, like a lot of the bombing that was going on in Yemen during Trump. Like that's kind of the, like, oh, it wasn't like he wasn't doing that. And sure, that, and I have my issues with that as well.
Mm.
But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you know, getting back to realpolitik, you are in control of the empire, the world empire that has been established using the force of the military. Um, I'm sure if a president goes in there and doesn't do any of that stuff, I kind of don't think that's possible given the current power structure, but also just in terms of managing that influence. Like, yeah, maybe you do have to show force in some ways to establish influence.
Mm.
Maybe it all can't be done through negotiations, but if you look at it, at least in terms of this situation, like you said, no one died. We saved face in some ways. Um, it was like if a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, can you imagine if Kamala was here?" Like yeah, this would be happening, and it would spiral out of control because she doesn't know how to play that game, and clearly the people that were behind Biden weren't able to do that either. So
Well, and even if I was a raging liberal and I was thinking about foreign policy, I would still I would like to think that I would still give Trump some credit for not being like a weak and feckless type leader. I mean, that's arguably why the war in Ukraine happened in the first place. And because of, Biden pretty much said, "Oh, if it's kind of a small incursion, it won't be that big a deal." And that pretty much I mean, that was a giant, or it was just like a wink to Putin. Hey, now's the time. And so, and Trump says it all the time. It would have never have happened. He says that all the time. It would have never have happened. And sometimes I'm glad I'm glad Trump is president now, and sometimes I think about it. Oh man, like that 2020 election being stolen, um, it had so many horrible consequences. But at the same time, I'm glad people got a little bit of a eye opening, or like a little bit of uh, just a little bit of a taste of what the Democrats do when they're in power. Is they basically blow up the world, um, and so uh, you know it- Trump coming back in 2024. I, sometimes I think about it and I'm like, was it actually a good thing that he lost 2020? So that way, people could open their eyes a little bit and wake up a little bit, and then we can get a more powerful 2024. But the problem is with that 2020 election, I mean, the war in Ukraine probably would have never happened. I mean, it's arguable that October 7th wouldn't have happened. I mean, so it's like, man, the elections have consequences, and the world pretty much blew up because of that one rigged election, which it seems like Kash Patel and Tulsi and few others are trying to uncover some of what happened in 2020. Is it a good idea? I guess talking about realpolitik, is it a good idea for us to kind of go backwards in time and look at the 2020 election to see what really happened, I mean, I just don't have any faith that they're going to actually prosecute anybody. But anyway,
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's borderline like the Epstein issue to me at this point, where obviously it matters in a big way. Probably in some ways, well, the Epstein is pretty expansive in terms of a lot of things, but I don't know if it's. Well, there's only so much political capital that you have when you're in office. That was kind of my issue with the Iran situation initially, where I was like, "What? We shouldn't be expending the political capital on this. We should be using it on the mass deportations and obviously pursuing justice legally for a lot of the shenanigans that happened under Biden, like Fauci or the 2020 election, or the clear corruption that's going on across many different aspects of the government." And there is some. I don't know if you saw this, and I don't know if it's correct. We'll wait and see. It seems like a stretch, but I saw something that came up across Twitter that was basically like Pam Bondi is preparing to file charge Mayorkas with treason. Did you see that?
because he didn't get a pardon, right?
Yeah, he did not get a pardon, and it's honestly, I mean, you could certainly make that argument in a court of law, at the very least, to try to do it, because it is treasonous. You're literally leaving the gates open and then flying people in.
Yeah.
So there could be some stuff in the works that Tom Homans keeps saying, like, you just wait, like wait and see what's going to happen with some of these sanctuary. Like somebody could go to jail in terms of, I mean, sanctuary cities are breaking federal law. Are we like? You're basically saying you're like, oh, this is no, this is a sanctuary from federal law.
Well, what about my state's rights, Adrian?
Well, your state still is a part of something that has a border, and arguably the most important part of the country is maintaining the border that maintains your country.
Yeah.
So that in a state's right, I believe in states' rights to a degree. I think it's valuable, but when it comes to something as fundamental, as a border, they like to talk about, oh, it's a constitutional crisis. Well, what have you guys been putting us through by challenging the most fundamental law of your entire country for the last, whatever it is, 10, 15 years with these sanctuary city laws? So I'm kind of getting to both the issue of deportations and the Iran thing. There was a lot of freakouts, a lot of people being annoying and like taking it too far. But I do think there's value in having like a collectively not doing what Dave Smith did, because that was fucking stupid. But
I think he was just using it to. I think he believes what he believes, so I wouldn't call him a grifter. But I do think he was really. He saw this as an opportunity to just get more attention, basically.
Well, but the thing is, in terms of like, so if you're trying to influence Trump in any real way, use your power, your voice to sway the conversation. If you just go DEFCON 5 and you pretty much say no, Trump should be, that you're limiting your ability to then say like, oh, Trump's terrible, because then you're just one of those people who's already said, oh, well, you should be removed from office. Like, yeah, we got the point. Like he basically took that version of going DEFCON whatever away from himself, and then you eventually just become one of those people who's like a Keith Olbermann, where it's like, oh my God, Keith Olbermann is calling for, wow, this means something, guys. Like, no, it doesn't mean anything.
It's kind of like the boy who cried wolf kind of thing. Like once you go to, it reminds me of in like a relationship, the nuclear bomb is like, I'm gonna kill myself or something like that. It's like once you go there, you can't really you can't put Pandora back in the box a little bit, you know, and he'll always be remembered as a panikin ideologue that freaked out, made a whole bunch of predictions that turned out to be a bunch of garbage. You know, you got to be careful with all these predictions. I'm so tired of the prophesying. You know, on both sides, on all sides, there it's always like this. If this happens, then this is going to happen, and it's like a slippery slope type argument. You know, and I think I understand I understand the panic. I understand the fear. I understand the genuine concern about getting into another war. That's a huge deal. And so, you know, another one of these voices was Tucker Carlson, right? Who, you know, I've liked Tucker for a long time. I think he's been kind of kooky lately, the way Trump kind of said it. But I have a little bit of a unique take on the whole Tucker situation because he did that, you know, interview with Ted Cruz, and so, but Tucker was making a lot of predictions, and it's like, what's the difference between a political prediction and a prophecy that doesn't come true? And if a prophecy doesn't come true, what are you, a false prophet? You know, and so you got to be careful with that stuff. And Alex Jones is going off the damn reservation when it comes to this stuff too.
Oh, that's his brand, though. That's how.
Yeah, that's true.
He had the end of the world podcast during Y2K, so.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I'd still appreciate Tucker's counter signaling over somebody like Candace Owens, or Dave Smith, or anyone else that jumps ship on the level where you're basically like, oh, I regret having done this. I shouldn't have voted. Like, because I think there is there is value in counter signaling, like what happened with the H-1B visa thing with Vivek, and then what happened with Trump backing down on mass deportations. People counter signal, and whether he capitulated, whether he's just doing testing, but the point is, if he's doing testing, it is also for his base. So if he sees that his base is not like, you know, 100% they want to attack, they're all behind me. Mm-hmm. Like, he can see that. He know. I mean,
are you talking about Trump?
With Trump. He can see that with Tucker and other people, where, and a lot of his base, where it's like, okay, and I think you saw that in terms of, you know, I can't just, whether that was his decision or not, but he's like giving, I guess, voice to that side where I realize this is a part of my base that doesn't agree with me on this. Similar to how he doesn't talk about the vaccine anymore because people kept booing him over it. Yeah. There's value in terms of like, yeah, you may think this is good, but like, here's the people that still love you believe this. Whereas if you go the Candace Owens, Dave Smith route where you're completely throwing it out, then he's like, oh, well, you're fucking, if I'm dead to you, then why should I listen to anything you have to say? You remove any power that you have. So I think counter signaling is valuable, and I think it did potentially play a part in some decisions that we've seen, but also you don't want to go nuclear because then that's it. Mm-hmm. Dave Smith can't. Any critique he has of Trump now is hindered by that because he went too far, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think we agree about Tucker. You mentioned counter signaling. What I think that he was doing. Well, I think two things about Tucker. I think he has PTSD from supporting the Iraq War. I think he like legitimately regrets that decision. I think he thinks that he was very influential, and he is, and he supported basically a bad war that ended up, you know, killing a lot of people. And so how do you really, I mean, that's got to mess with your soul. That's got to mess with your mind a little bit. And so I think that he's like, any future war, I'm going to err on the side of caution times 10, and I'm just going to be on the opposite side of any war because he can reduce his moral culpability by opposing a war as opposed to the moral culpability of supporting a war the way he did. But I also think that he gave Ted Cruz a really, really good opportunity to present strong arguments and to refute or rebut the strongest arguments on the other side. So Tucker is steel manning the anti-war voices and presenting the most logical and reasonable and strongest arguments of the anti-war side of things, whether that's the people who are anti-Israel and don't, or just anti-interventionists or isolationists or libertarians or just anti-war people in general. I think he was really doing a good job in voicing those opinions in the strongest way possible. And that gives Cruz or whoever else, Trump, an opportunity to come out and face those steelman arguments head on and actually present, not only rebut those arguments and give say counter examples, or to give just basically to give a defense of his position, to give a strong defense of his position. And Tucker gave him, generally, I mean, Tucker was an asshole in the interview, but he gave Cruz the opportunity to actually, and Cruz totally failed on two very crucial aspects of that conversation. I don't think Cruz turned out as bad as people were making it out to be, especially the whole population of Iran thing. That was the dumbest thing. That's not even an argument. I mean, it's so stupid, and everybody thought that that was just like like that Tucker bodied Ted Cruz because of the population thing. No, the thing that Ted Cruz got bodied on was the dispensationalism. So the Bible tells us to, commands Christians to support and defend Israel. That was where he really got bodied. But if you watch the whole interview, it's not that bad. Cruz did not do that bad. He's a very smooth talker. I think he's a Machiavellian. I think he's very smart. There's no question how smart he is. It is weird that somebody would say, yeah, when I first got elected or when I ran for the first time, I ran on being the most pro-Israel person in Congress. It's kind of weird. But I think he did a really bad job. He had a bad day when it came to explaining that type of stuff. I think Cruz isn't, I think he's a Zionist, if you want to put it that way. But I do think that he cares about America, though, too. And I think that he genuinely believes that supporting Israel is in the best interest of the United States, national security-wise. We can disagree with him or whatever, but I think he genuinely believes that. And Tucker said the same thing in that interview. Is like, I just want to let you know, I do think that you're being genuine in your beliefs, which is more than you can say about 99% of politicians, really.
Yeah, that's really all you can ask for, is for them to be genuine rather than putting on a face and doing stuff behind the American people.
Well, speaking of genuine, we've got a new mayor potentially in New York City. Don't mess with the Zoran. Yeah, he seems like a very carefully crafted, like he gives me Obama vibes, but he's not as compelling.
Yeah.
His squinty eyes too. A lot of the videos I see him talking, I don't actually like listen to him talk, but it just creeps me out. It's like this guy is a construct of somebody. He's too smooth, but he's also like not believable. I'm like, how the fuck are you guys believing this guy?
The left falls for just the most surface level rhetoric every single time. It's like they're like, whenever I have a conversation with a lefty, it's always like, but they said that they were the good guys though, and that you guys were the bad guys. They said that. I heard them say it. So they must be the good guys and you guys must be the bad guys. They said that you guys are Nazis. It's like they fall for the most surface level rhetoric. And I was going to say Mamdani reminds me of Ramaswamy.
Yeah, there is that. They do have that similarity. Well, I don't want to, I don't want to just bash him without letting him speak for himself. So let me just play this video, and we can hear him.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank all the terrorists who voted for me. I couldn't have done this without you guys. I promise to defund the police so you can keep planning attacks and shit. Also, thank you to all my poor black people who just want to be able to loot and twerk on top of police cars and hit white women in the face for no reason. You can keep doing all that shit. There will be no police. You want to shit on the subway and harass people? Well, you voted for the right guy. Let's make New York a third world shithole again. Thank you.
They say that democracy is the theory that the common man knows what he wants and he deserves to get it good and hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels like he is going to get in since he is the primary, right? And it's mostly Democratic voters.
Yeah, the only hope really at this point is that Eric Adams can somehow build some type of coalition. He's pretty unpopular though because he's seen as collaborating with Trump more.
Yeah.
And you can see in those protests in New York, or I don't live there, but you can, when you watch videos, and you know the politics of New York. Somebody like Mamdani, I can't even say his name.
Mamdani.
I just want to say Mama. Mama Daddy.
Oh yeah, Trump was called Daddy. Go ahead.
That is true. Somebody like him that's good, like, I'm gonna fight ICE. You know, and I know this is out of sequence. You guys don't have to play your cut clip just yet, but I'm just gonna play this because a lot of people have been saying, "Oh, he's an Islamist." You know, he's a he's a Muslim. I think he's more of like a democratic socialist, like at least in terms of what he parrots.
Closer to a communist.
Yeah.
Which is probably worse. I mean, if there's one thing that's worse than Islam, it's probably communism.
Well, it'll let Islam or any other like outside cultural force take hold because you know, Western society bad. Yeah. So it's a Trojan horse. But he had this interview talking about, you know, one of his budget things he wants to fund, and this is my cuck clip right here.
And one of the things that we've said beyond saying that we're going to make this a sanctuary city for LGBTQIA plus workers, beyond saying that we're going to establish an office of LGBTQIA plus affairs, is also that we're going to provide $65 million in funding for gender-affirming care, the same amount of funding that the federal government threatened to pull out from local providers for that kind of work. And in this moment especially, if we want to fight the Trump administration, we have to do so by fully funding our own services, taxing the wealthiest New Yorkers and corporations here. And one of the things that...
So he wants to fund 65 a city funded, which I haven't fact checked that, but that seems that's taking it to the next. Like we're gonna tax people to fund gender affirming care for minors.
Of course, for minors, it has to be minors. There's the logical conclusion of transgenderism is you have to stop puberty from happening until they decide what gender they want to be, right? So even if they try to play this little game that it's not for minors, it really is for minors. And they, you know, you see Dylan Mulvaney at the White House talking to Biden specifically about gender transition and gender affirming care, which is basically gender transition for minors. They said that specifically when Dylan Mulvaney went to the White House to sit down with Biden. And I thought at the time, I was like, nope, Democrats, they're done. They're done. There's no way they're even going to have a chance. This clip should be on 24/7 on every news station of Biden talking to that delusional, mentally ill person talking about transitioning little kids. I mean, it's crazy that the Dems even have as much power as they do have. It's crazy that they win. It's crazy that they're probably going to win the midterms. And we're going to have to cut federal funding to New York. I mean, they're going to be doing these. What did you see the thing about the government grocery stores? Is
Yeah.
like everything's going to be free, guys. Like it's the most insane shit ever. I mean, I kind of doubt that they're going to be able to get away with it.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Well, life hack: if you defund the police, then you can just easily go steal from the government store.
There you go. Yeah, bread lines coming up. It might be a sign of the fourth turning, because the generation that's voting that type of person in is not informed, and they're not as I don't know, experienced in life as they assume they are. So it's like bringing on pretty much a natural cycle, and I think the cities will definitely be the first spots that are hit with it.
what is the fourth turning? I mean, I've heard like a little bit about it, and I know there's a book that's kind of lays it out. If you had to
It's like
explain it.
every fourth generation is a cycle basically, and starts out with you know, a tough society breaking through hard times and building a lot of character. Then the kids of those get softer, and eventually the fourth generation is, you know, coddled to the point of a disaster happens of some sort, whether it be voting in the wrong type of system or a type of war, basically.
That kind of reminds me of the quote: "Hard times create good men. Good men
Yep.
create good times. Good times create
Weak men.
Weak men. You know,
Weak men create hard times.
So
And
then
then-
it's almost
Yeah,
like
it's
the
the
fourth turning. In that
Same
way.
cycle, yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't there something though about a rising power? Whenever a rising power, a rising economic power comes, starts to catch up with the global hegemon, that there will be conflict or something like that. Does that
Yeah.
sound familiar?
Yeah, I think that's another cycle that seems to keep happening.
Which is why we should just keep our empire. I don't know. I mean, I'm down to turn it back into a republic if you guys want. I mean, I'll allow it. But we kind of were handed an empire essentially. Trump winning in 2016. I think him winning, the significance of that is basically impact event that will ripple throughout, you know, the future of humankind, because he was really the first outsider. Not even the only other outsider I could think of would maybe be like JFK, but even he came from a very political family and stuff like that, and a very well-off family that was, you know, involved in politics. Trump is the first outsider businessman that came in to government. Nobody thought he was going to win. He comes in there and he's an actual human being that's actually like running the stuff. From before that, it's been like the military industrial complex with the intel agencies and, you know, whatever foreign influence and stuff like that. So Trump went in there and actually handed, not only handed the republic back to the people, but he basically handed the people an empire, which is where we're at now. And so thinking about realpolitik, it's like we may as well, my thinking is that there's going to be an empire. There just is. It's not, you can't stop it. It's kind of like reality bends towards there being an empire. And if there's going to be an empire, we should control it. And by we, I mean specifically us three. I'm kidding, but
Agreed.
on a
Yeah.
serious note, I think that Christians should control the empire, and because I also kind of think we should police the world, and this is where I would kind of break off from my realpolitik and get a little bit more ideological. Is that, you know, my moral system requires me to stop evil things from happening, as long as that doesn't come to the detriment of myself and my family. And there's a hierarchy there. As long as me stopping bad guys doesn't hurt my own people, then I think we have a moral obligation to stop bad guys. And
Well,
so, go ahead.
I'm not going to fully disagree with some of your ideas. I think the most important thing, really, for, you know, to be an empire or a colonial power, in my mind, if you're going to take that step, you really have to secure the homeland, and also, and I'm not just saying that from like a modern bullshit homeland security kind of thing. I'm
The border.
saying, yeah, in terms of your border, in terms of your culture, in terms of the identity of your nation.
It's true.
And I think a lot of that, and when a culture is so fractured like ours now, I mean, we have pretty much, you could make an argument, at the very least, we have two very distinct, completely different worldviews. If you try to talk to somebody who is in that MSNBC or just normie left-wing mindset, it's your ability to communicate on these issues is seemingly impossible. Like with the border, where you're trying to make these arguments, that the United States, it's not just magical soil. It's not just somebody comes here and then they get to imbibe in the magical soil and water that makes us so powerful and great in this society. It's like, no, there's an ethos, there's a cultural foundation that if you dilute it, and the term the melting pot has been pushed as this shining beacon of, the greatest parts of America. And there are good parts of combining different cultures and bringing certain ideas in.
Just food. That's it.
And music's good too.
Yeah, that's true.
But,
music and food, and that's it.
Yeah, right. But we don't really have a melting pot. It's more like a charcuterie board, Sometimes you put the cheese on the meat, but a lot of the time it's just the meat and then the cheese and then the crack,
It's true.
So I guess to get back to the point of if we're able to have empire, if we're able to be a colonial power, which, I mean, you can, a lot of modern thought or like things that are pushed on us is that colonialism is evil. It was it's used as this constant like shame against Western societies, against white people. And sure, there's a lot of aspects of colonialism that are brutal and violent and abusive, but there's also a lot of aspects that you forget in terms of like bringing some sense of civilization to an area that doesn't have it, and providing technology. And you can say that's all that is soft power, but there are people who have benefited from that being brought to them,
Yeah.
But in order to do that, you need to have a strong foundation. And what you see with other empires is they lose that, but they continue to try to also pursue all these different goals. And if we're going to have an empire, if we're going to continue this dominance over, the world, we need to have that strong foundation. And I do think that the border is
Well, so you brought up the border, and you were like, well, we can't have an empire unless we seal the border, but the border is sealed. And that's one thing that I wake up in the morning, and I legitimately, I wake up in the morning and I go, Trump is president and the border is sealed. I mean, sealed, like 99.9% sealed. Yeah, we didn't get as many mass deportations, and hopefully we'll get more. And you know how I feel about that. I'm actually not the most pro mass deportation person, but I'm very, very ideological when it comes to shutting that border down completely. And I mentioned before, when I first started getting into politics during COVID times, I was looking at the border, and I just thought to myself, I want to close that border just to know that we can. And just to know that we can, because if we can't, then we really don't have a nation. We really don't have a country. And so I just want to, I just want to be optimistic, and I want to be celebratory and grateful for the fact that we do have a sealed border, so we can get back to colonizing and expanding. We're coming, Canada.
Yeah, where's that at now?
Well, they're talking about joining the EU, so
Oh yeah.
good luck with that, guys.
Jeez.
Yeah, well, we got to this point because of the Kumbaya boomers, that we can if we could just hold hands and drink a Coke and smile and sing songs, that we can love everybody and all it is that toxic empathy, suicidal
Hmm.
empathy that was promoted as. And here's the thing, I will at least for the boomers, I wouldn't say credit because that's being too generous, but to at least see their perspective. Back in the 60s, it wasn't, we're not dealing with the ramifications of it. So it's like, oh yeah, we can love everybody and let everyone in. Everyone's great. No borders, no rules, no, like, be
Mm-hmm.
yourself, find your bliss.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cut your dick off, Timmy. That's fine. If that's your bliss. Okay, let the neighborhood be overrun with Trende Aragua. Well, that's just their bliss. Like, no, we need order, but we got to this point because of that mindset. And this guy in particular kind of summed it up for me. Just like, oh no, the immigrants, but very self-interested.
The truck and the tools left behind, the gardeners gone.
They left the lawnmower going right here on the front lawn, the car open. They threw my gardener's phones in the car with the car keys, left everything open, and just took off.
Christopher Ames alerted to the activity outside his home on 5th Street in Ontario by his neighbors, who told him his two gardeners were just mowing his lawn when they were taken into custody Thursday morning. On a street where neighbors proudly displayed the American flag, the arrest seemed jarring.
I just think that's wrong. This is not the way we treat people, and this is not the way this country should be acting.
Ames did not
My
witness
gardener.
the arrest, but
Now
he
I gotta
believes
mow
the
my
men were
yard.
taken into custody by immigration and customs enforcement agents.
Son mis sobrinos, son mi familia.
Late tonight, the workers' family members showed up to claim.
Yeah, but it's more the sure, I don't know those guys. It might have been. It's tough. It's tough to get deported. But the point of that was the old man who's like, my gardeners, they were giving me a good deal, and now they're gone. And that is the argument that's used constantly about, like, who's gonna pick the food? Who's gonna
Pick
clean
the
your
crops.
toilet?
Yeah.
Who's gonna be my slave? Like, this is Democratic Rep Greg Kate Kassar, and he said the classic line.
And what's just so sick about it is these right-wing politicians, they eat food cooked by immigrants. They get their fancy cars cleaned by immigrants. They do their corrupt deals and buildings built and engineered and maintained and cleaned by immigrants.
I thought it was more worse than that. But he's basically like, yeah, who's going to build the things? Who's going to pick the crops? Who's going to, like we didn't have a society that was built by the citizens doing those things. And it's also, there's a certain element of it that's like defeatist to me too, that like, oh, everyone's so lazy, no one has the work ethic. And there's certainly an element of truth to that, but it's also, you're taking advantage of these people. The economy is built on that. You claim to support the working class and people that are trying to make a living, and yet you're complaining of, like, well, we don't have the cheap labor anymore, so your food's going to go up. Things are going to cost more. But you're taking away from the overall collective value of your nation by saying, like, well, wasn't that was the whole thing, like exporting jobs to countries and then importing the jobs that are left. You import people to fill them.
Mm-hmm.
And that level of, like, they claim to be the collectivists, but it's like, it's this Art Deco modern humanism that's just like, well, yeah, but we got to, what about that guy who's just trying to get a better life? And it's like, well, you don't give a shit about the guy who can't afford anything, who's literally 2 doors down from you, who doesn't have an opportunity to do anything because you're supporting these things in the name of compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Some vets got kicked out of their, because a lot of vets, homeless vets or people who are struggling. There was like a motel in town here that a lot of them would stay at, and they got kicked out to make room for immigrant housing. And it's like one of those stories where it's like, you guys are always talking about, oh, they want to take the vets off this, and like, your policies are impacting that also. Um,
Well, one word that really stood out to me in that clip with the white boomer talking about taking his gardener away. One word in particular is the word should. He said, "This is not how we treat people. We should be letting them and taking care of them, or let them seek a better life, or help them if we can. We should help them if we can." And should, I, I always say it, should is a weird word because should is a moral term. Every single time you say the word should, pretty much every time you're breaking out of the factual world and going into the ethical world, the realm of ethics and morals. Should not, ought not, you ought do this, you ought not do that. And all of politics is basically, I'll just break down all of politics for everybody. Politics is just a giant shit show of ethics, but no one ever studied ethics. And so everybody's just making it up as they go and arguing with each other. That is what politics is. So, the lefties like to say things like, you can't legislate morality. They say that all the time, which is the most idiotic thing in the world. The only thing that you can legislate is morality. And so the guy in that clip, he said, this is not how we treat people. We should treat people with respect. We should treat people better. We should give them a better way of life if we have the ability to do it. In which I, kind of do agree. But remember what I said about, you should protect people against bad guys as long as that doesn't, harm your own people and your own family and your own self. And so, and that does harm, bringing in so many illegal immigrants does harm our people. It does harm. So yes, we should treat people with dignity and respect. We should, but we also should respect all the people that are trying to come in legally. And when people come in illegally, it's unfair for the people that are trying to come in legally. It's also unfair for taxpayers that actually do have to pay taxes on things. It's unfair. It's an unfair weight on the system, and you know, whatever produce picking, crop picking advantage or how do I say it? The good things that the illegals do bring into this country do not outweigh the bad things, the strain on the system. And so it is a giant ethical shit show. But I'm just going to come back to this. The border is sealed. I'm just happy about it. And you know what that proves is that we do have some sort of control still. There's a lot of people, especially the J-pilled type people, will say there's not a political solution. We're past political solutions, which begs the question, what's next or what would work? And that would be like revolution. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there about the ethics and, go ahead, Silas.
I was gonna say, like, that guy's saying we should treat, illegals with respect and all that, which, like you're saying, there is a baseline of that. But by doing that, if we don't enforce a law that's protecting the people of the country, then we're not respecting the, birthright citizenship that we all have in the country. And the government, like you're saying, the laws, if they're based on a morality, it is the morality of not letting too many people into your home, and, like you're saying, outweighing everything and putting a stress on all the systems. And so it's disrespectful for that law to not be abided by. And I do think there will be some sanctuary city actions that will, I mean, some actually already did happen. There's a hearing, and like the mayor of Denver and Chicago and at least one other sat there and took questions from senators. And there's some, like, it would raise a lot of questions. Pretty much they are n- knowingly harboring the criminal, illegal aliens that are actually doing harm. You know, it's
Yeah.
not just the ones that are trying to make a better life for themselves. It's like there's systems in place to keep the criminals on the streets.
Well, I'm just reminded of the heat map of comparing people on the left with people on the right, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but it's basically the people on the right tend to care more about people in their immediate circle, their family, their local town, their country, and that's where their view of or like their importance of where they care most about. Whereas people on the left tend to have a much more outward circle of concern. Like they're more concerned about the world, or in this case, you know, the immigrant who's just trying to get a better life, than they are about how it affects their own community. And they're using that basically, they're looking at the oppression matrix. So they see like the guy who's sneaking in across the border from Honduras, who is just trying to get a better life because his country is it's not good there. That's on a higher level of concern than the homeless vet or the, you know, the person, just the local blue collar, middle class, working class person who's struggling. That's not oppressed enough. So their system of ethics is mostly based on who's more oppressed.
Intersectionality.
Even though if you look at it from a, if it's like a line, everyone's in line to get to the front of the line to where they can be served, whether that means, you know, getting the house, getting the job, or even just getting the benefits if you're disabled, or you're an actual trying to immigrate legally. You're waiting in line, you're taking your turn, and then some guy just jumps to the head of the line, and instead of, you know, like the reaction being we need to enforce the order of this line, Democrats and people on the left tend to be like, but he's got such a hard time though. But I mean, what about him? I mean, if we enforce this line, it's really going to be hard because he couldn't wait. He couldn't wait in line. And if you continue to do that over and over, then what's the point of the fucking line? And so that gets to the heart of anarcho tyranny that I talk about a lot. And the border is the most prime example of that because it's a fundamental aspect of your country. If you don't enforce that, then you all laws fall apart from there. And you see that locally with people who are here illegally, driving cars without license plates. They're not insured. The cops, if they pull them over, what are they going to do? Write them a ticket to who? You're not even sure, like, they don't have a legal entity. You know, you don't have that legal fiction, quote unquote, of, you don't have the social security number. They don't have any legal mechanism to enforce. You're a citizen, you now have a debt against you, you have skin in the game. If you don't have skin in the game, you don't have, like, all of the, so what I'm saying is all of those laws break down from there. And when you look at how is, oh, this isn't compassionate, it's not humane to just enforce these laws. Well, you sacrifice pretty much every aspect of society as a result of that because laws break down. What's the point of the line? That guy's just jumping. I'll just jump in line. I'll just steal from that government-run grocery store. You know, that's why it's the most important thing, and that's why above any other issue outside of war or like preventing World War III, really, to me, like. That's why, like the people blackpilling, like, oh, so they're all part of the same thing. Like, okay, even if I'm going to assume every single other policy would be the same, if 10 million more people don't cross the border illegally in 4 years, then that's a win.
Yeah.
It's a win.
Yeah. And you can't
pay to say that.
Yeah, and you can't say, oh, it's all a part of the same thing. It's like you vote for another person and you get more of the same. But the border hasn't been closed like this, what, in like 200 years? So it's not as, when it comes to that border issue, which is, like you said, arguably the most important issue, that is solved And what I love about Trump is he breaks politics. So no one can, we know now that it can be closed. Before it was like during Trump's first term, it was like, oh, they keep blocking him on building the wall. You know, they did everything they could to block him from actually achieving his border policy, his zero tolerance border policy. And then Biden comes in after him and gets rid of Remain in Mexico. And they did everything they could. It was like it was impossible. It was one of those one issues that it was like, it's impossible to close this thing. But now we know it is possible to close it. It is closed now. And no politician moving forward, no president moving forward is going to be able to get away with being like, oh, they keep blocking me or whatever. No, we know now it can be closed, and we want more. We want it to remain closed. So, another reason why I love Trump is because he breaks politics. And I was gonna say, we were kind of hinting on a little bit of this hierarchy of charity, which J.D. Vance was pretty eloquent in explaining, and this was a while ago. It was kind of, I think it was during that same interview of like, I don't really care, Margaret, and he was actually articulating Aquinas's hierarchy of charity. Aquinas is kind of like St. Thomas Aquinas is very similar to Aristotle or Plato. Plato and Aristotle are very like fundamental to our actually like a lot of different aspects, whether it's mathematics or whether it's science, especially natural sciences, logic and stuff like that. So Aristotle is very foundational to Western civilization, but Aquinas is as well. And St. Thomas Aquinas, gosh, I don't want to read this whole thing. It's a little bit long, but it's basically the hierarchy of charity. And so so I'll just break it down. It goes, number one is God. The highest objective charity is God, who is the source of all goodness and the ultimate end of human life. Loving God above all is the foundation of charity, as he is the supreme good and the reason for loving others. Two, oneself. After God, one must love oneself. And then three, neighbors. Then it extends to neighbors. Then enemies. Number four, it says enemies. Aquinas includes enemies in the scope of charity, following Christ's command to love your enemies. And then five, one's own body. Charity extends to caring for one's physical well-being, but this is subordinate to spiritual goods and the love of others. So I think the left is very confused about ethics, and especially, I mean, what I just said is probably completely foreign. It's probably like speaking another language that they don't understand, like an alien language. But having that hierarchy of needs, and that's kind of why I specified when I said I think we should police the world, as long as it isn't having such a negative effect on ourselves and our own family and our own people. So that relates to the border, and JD Vance did a really good job of bringing that up, and it's very encouraging to know that there's a politician at the national level that's in line for the presidency that's actually articulating St. Thomas Aquinas's theories on ethics. It's pretty awesome. I'm white pilled as far as that goes. But does that make sense? Is that something you guys have heard before, or am I making sense here?
Yeah, I've never heard that, but it definitely makes sense. It aligns with what I've learned just through other materials of what you should prioritize, basically, to be the best person and be like a world changer in your own way.
Well, if we're looking at how inversion has taken over every aspect of society and ethics and morals,
ding 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 ding,
it's basically been inverted to where I'm God. So number 5, it's all about you, and then your enemy, like the
your
person,
body specifically too.
a foreigner. And I'm not saying every foreigner is an enemy, but in terms of like closeness to your proximity, your sphere of influence, and people that you should have a priority for, No, that takes priority over everything else. So I mean, if you look at the left's system of morality and hierarchy, I mean, think about the Fight the Oligarchy tour. Like, hierarchy in general is not some. It's like a dirty word if you're speaking in, because revolution, it's like, oh, the hierarchy's corrupt on every level.
And then you get the patriarchy.
Right. People who are more, I mean, generally more competent. Um, so you're basically, uh, yeah, we're dealing with people that don't value that really in any way. So, I mean, one thing that really gets at me is the all the signs that say no one is illegal on stolen land, because at the same time, and on the other side of their sign will be like, we need to save democracy. It's like, well, if you think this is stolen land and no one can be illegal on it, um, what is your basis for enforcing any type of laws that uphold a democracy? But you're also saying, like, this place, because this place is stolen, then we should have no, I mean, it's just kind of anarchy in a sense. You know, not valuing order at all. Like, well, somebody, this is stolen, so it's so nihilistic and twisted, but it's such a catchy phrase people latch onto. It's just like, it's just, yeah, it's that inversion in action.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's almost identical, like you're saying, the inversion of that hierarchy. The last one was our body, right? So
Right. Mm-hmm.
so they prioritize transforming their body, or like you identifying them and their body as a certain, sex or whatever. That's the priority, no matter what.
Talking about democracy, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to say about the immigration issue, is that, people on the left, democracy is a axiomatic, fundamental ethical virtue to them. It's central to their whole system. But immigration is like a 70-30 issue. It's an overwhelming majority of people that want to reduce, well, pretty much eliminate completely illegal immigration. I mean, it's a 70-30, maybe even 80-20 issue. And so if democracy is one of the highest hierarchy, is one of the, or holds one of the highest spots on the hierarchy, then you kind of have to respect the demos. You have to respect the people. You have to respect the will of the people. But I think that they would probably say, an honest leftist would say, well, the problem is that they're operating under a false consciousness. And it's actually us, that we actually know what's best for people, and people are just have been propagandized by Fox News. And if they really understood morality and politics properly, then then they would be on our side. And so we have to keep, ironically, propagandizing to people to manipulate their will, essentially.
Yeah, seems to be. They always blame like the right's level of like mental capacity or whatever for falling for Fox News or whoever we're listening to, and on their side they're just pushing propaganda from all kinds of sources, like movies even. So it's projection at its finest.
It is interesting to see. So to me, there's two tribes, right? There's tribe A, tribe B, or tribe blue, tribe red. Two tribes. And they're almost exact opposites of each other. And I'm wondering if maybe that's just kind of the natural flow of politics. It just, like, kind of how reality bends towards empire, reality bends towards that division. It's like it's almost a perfect division, and it makes me think. I think I actually agree with the left on a lot of stuff, and I actually agree with the left on a lot of stuff. Like, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I think there should be some sort of gatekeeping on speech. I err on the side of free speech, of course, but I'm not a free speech absolutist. I have a general disdain for cops. I think police generally are more bad than good. They're a necessary evil, and there's a lot of good cops out there. Don't get me wrong, but I have a natural disposition to disliking police. I think they have too much power, and if you watch some of the First Amendment audit videos and stuff like that, police, like, they're tyrants, they're petty tyrants, they're bullies. They don't protect people's rights and stuff like that. They really don't. Some do, but generally they don't. So that's something that I kind of agree with, or I align with the left on. Another thing is, I don't really believe in the Constitution the way that conservatives do. I think that it's a social contract, and it's a good, it's a good starting point. It's a good kind of rules of the road, and I'm okay with that for the most part. But I don't think that the Constitution is the highest. I don't believe in its metaphysical authority, is what I'll say. And I think the left kind of views the Constitution as kind of a dead document that was written by a bunch of white guys, and it doesn't translate properly to a modern world. So I agree with them on a lot of stuff, but it's where they kind of go off the rails. But they tend to go off the rails when it comes to that type of stuff. They'll, when it comes to free speech, they really will wield that authority in a way that is completely unjust. I think there's a way to police speech in a just way. So, but I had a conversation with a pretty popular X account that's on the left, and I said, I can't remember what he posted, some crazy lefty thing of the day, and I said, hey, you guys say that we're in a cult, but I want you to tell me one thing that you agree with the right about, otherwise you're in a cult. And he actually did respond to me, and he said, I want the Epstein files released. And I was like, cool, man. Like, that was awesome that you even, usually lefties won't go that far, or actually respond or actually engage in that way. And so that was just a cool little moment. I wish I could reach through to the other side more. I really do. But finding people to, like, engage meaningfully and make good faith arguments is it's pretty much impossible at this point. But anyways, I'm kind of like going off on a whole nother thing here. But I think it's important. I guess my whole point, though, is I think it is important to be able to agree with the other side about certain things. But each side is basically in a cult. A cult being a shared set of values with a charismatic leader. That's basically like what a cult is, right? And so I've been thinking about this lately, and tell me what you think, especially Silas. I want your opinion. Is that a cult, being in a cult, isn't inherently a bad thing. There are bad cults, but it's not, being in a cult isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think that that's one of those words, like authoritarianism, that has kind of been demonized a little bit, or has like a negative connotation to it. And to me, being in the cult isn't bad. It's like what the cult believes. Are their beliefs right or wrong or good or bad or true or false? That's really where the difference is between like a good cult or a bad cult.
Yeah, because those beliefs lead to the actions of all the individuals. And really, yeah, a cult is just a little pocket of culture. So it's not inherently bad, but yeah, if the larger structure of the cult is encouraging behavior and actions that are a detriment to others, then it's a toxic cult, and It's not like still it's not inherently bad. It's just encouraging and cultivating a behavior that isn't the best.
You know, it's interesting. You could very easily say Amish people are in a cult, but nobody says that, and then it's not very common. At least some people might, but it's just like, oh yeah, that's just that group of people that lives basically like it's the 1800s, but they're nice, and it seems to mostly work for them. So I think if a cult or like that strong of a belief system in the long run has net positives, at the very least, people, it becomes more normalized as just being like, that's just that group of people. But I mean, I guess that's a lot of religious sects. I mean, people say Mormons are a cult, or Seventh Day Adventists, or any other fringe group. But yeah, cults. It is like, it's just a group. Yeah, it's a subset of culture that's can be more intense. I do think it's interesting, especially with this Iran situation, where people talk about MAGA being a cult, or people that are aligned with Trump, they're in a cult. And I never saw this level of division whatsoever from the left when it came to Ukraine. I didn't see jack shit from people that were outward Biden supporters.
Yeah. For a cult, we seem to disagree and argue a lot.
Quite a lot.
Which is really just only handing the left a win. And that's why I mentioned off air that, like, I don't really like that issue because it splits the right. And, that's more of a realpolitik type, concern of mine. I don't like things that split the right. And I for sure do not like infighting, because that's why they win. They fall in line. They will have some disagreements, but they will fall in line in order to win elections. And that's really what we need. We did beat the woke mind virus. I don't want to say we killed it, but we beat it into submission. It's almost dead, but it could come back. And especially midterms right around the corner, and you got 2028 right around the corner as well. I mean, do we really want to sit here and fight each other like crazy? I mean, you have so, like, I'm sure you guys have seen, it's like people like the Hodge twins against Cat Turd, or, people like Candace and Tucker against, some of the more like neocon type positions. Like, and it really does create division. And sometimes I wonder, how much of that is being kind of spurred on? How much of that is being encouraged by foreign governments? That division, they want division in the U.S. and the left, foreign countries that want to take our place as the global hegemon, as the global empire. They want us divided. And the people on the left, they want the right divided. We should probably do that to them and say, hey, what's an issue that splits the left? Let's like push that issue in order to split the left, in order to win elections. But it does concern me to see all of that infighting, and I'm glad it's happening early. I think there's enough time. Like, a week is a long time, or a week is like 2 seconds in politics, but a week is also an eternity in politics. So it's like, I think it's early, this Iran episode, the season finale. We're on to the next season, but the season finale, I'd say season 2 finale with the Iran situation, was early enough to hopefully not have electoral consequences, but there are some new problems on the right. Just realpolitik. I'm not taking a position per se on that issue. I actually don't want to take a position on that issue with the Iran versus Israel. I lean towards Israel because I have my reasons, but because I hate Islam. That's the main reason why. But I don't want to take an issue because, I really genuinely feel like it's not my war. But I also know that we are a global empire and there's no way for us to not be involved. So if we're going to be involved, I want our interests to be. I want to further our interests. I want to protect our interests and move our. I want to move Trump's agenda forward. And I think Trump's agenda is world peace. And I do think you have to bomb some people in order to get world peace, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, there's a lot of memes about that, about him bombing and then calling for peace right after. It's pretty funny, but it
seems crazy, but I mean,
it's likely what needed to happen. Yeah, the peace through strength thing again. I think it is gonna trend, and each country is gonna show strength in different ways, and then come like pull back, and then there'll be like an agreement, I think. So I guess my position on the Iran and Israel thing is trust the plan, but it's not Trump's plan, it's God's plan. I think that's going to play out ultimately. So I think there are many agents of God in high places right now that are shifting things rapidly.
Yeah, and what you were saying about foreign influence too, in terms of creating division, I think there is and different agents. There are people like within our own government who are working for foreign countries, not just Israel.
Yes.
I listened. I highly recommend. There was a recent Tucker Carlson episode where he was talking to somebody from Minnesota who is one of the only like decent journalists up there. She was actually fired over the whole BLM thing in 2020. But she was talking a lot about Tim Walz, which we haven't even mentioned that whole assassination situation, which is very strange. They get into that topic, and there's that definitely seems like some sort of op. I mean, that's just it's something's fishy about it.
And it's gone, right? You know,
and it's just and he had a hit list, but he said he was hired by Tim Walz to take out Amy Klobuchar. He sounds a little schizo, like he's all over the place, but that's what makes me think it could be MK Ultra stuff. But anyway, she was talking about Tim Walz because they were getting into that discussion
with Tucker.
Yeah, and Tim Walz visited China over 30 times, and the strangest thing is he chose his, and he said this publicly, that he got married to his wife, I think it was right around the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. And so he would celebrate, like, which is, and Tucker brought it up, it's like, why would you associate your wedding with an event that was like literally murdering protesters who were protesting China? And Tim Walz made some weird statements about China, like, oh, maybe, China should just be in charge or something like that. And
kind of like Trudeau saying, oh, I'm so envious of Xi in China because he's able to get stuff done. I'm kind of like bogged down by all this democracy and this pesky democracy. If only I had like an ultimate authoritarian regime the way that Xi Jinping does, then I would basically have a Canadian utopia. You see them salivate over those dictatorships, and then they turn around and call anybody who disagrees with them a dictator. Well, but back to that Tim Walz thing, that guy has got some skeletons, and I can feel it.
Oh, you can see it. Yeah.
I'm a very evidence-based person. I'm very skeptical, but I'm also a vibes guy too. That guy's got fucking bad vibes.
Yeah, and I just want to
yeah, go ahead.
I want to remind everybody when we're blackpilling about oh, Trump's this, Trump's that. This guy could have been a heartbeat away from the presidency right here.
And make sure all the school teaching the children how to be a homosexual, and make sure they all teach about the transgender. So that is what important to me. Make sure all.
That guy,
China guy. He was like sleeping in the students' quarters too, on those China trips.
Do you guys remember during the campaign, there was an account called Black Insurrectionist? Do you guys remember that? I'm sure anybody out there. I wonder if you guys remember. Black Insurrectionist was doing all these crazy threads where he said a whistleblower, a victim of Tim Walz, was coming out and saying, and he was like posting all this stuff that of like emails that he was getting about Tim Walz being a PDF. And it was like he was taking students to like concerts and stuff like that because he's like a PE teacher or like a baseball coach or whatever he was. You know, he's involved in the school system. You know, everybody gives the Catholic Church a bad rap for the PDF stuff that goes on, and that's totally understandable. And I'm all about that, about calling that stuff out. But when it comes to like, let's be real here, the PDFs are really in the public school system, and you know that's just a huge red flag. Then you had all that stuff with the black insurrectionist was exposing, and his account got taken down. And he was gaining tons and tons of traction and followers and like all kinds of stuff, and then boom, his account was nuked. And I think it was probably because the Walz, the Harris Walz campaign probably filed a suit, you know, defamation type suit, and they probably, you know, they had tons of money. I mean, what did they spend? $1.5 billion on that campaign that just went straight down the toilet. But anyway, Tim Walz did that shit. I just believe it. And even if that stuff with black insurrectionists was fake, I can tell. I'm sorry, guys. I can tell. He's a PDF.
And we have enough evidence now with that shooter being like associated with him. That's enough for me, on top of the vibes, to know that he has a lot of skeletons.
I don't know, man. I think that goes a little too far. I mean, when you're married to this woman, come on, this guy's totally straight.
And you know what else that looks like? Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Donald Trump. We are turning the page. 52 days and we are turning the page.
Come on. What do you mean?
Wow.
That's not a married couple. I mean, let's be real here.
Yeah.
That's a fake wife.
Well, you know, with the Q posts, they would always say to look at the spouses and the arrangements and business deals they have, and you'll start to see that it's not just love that they get together on, it's how they can make money in the black market a lot of times.
Wait, you're saying
Dr. Jill Biden was running the show the whole time?
Probably.
You're saying Huma Abedin and Alex Soros aren't deeply in love?
Well, that's a different story.
Oh.
Yeah. They went to the same parties, if you get my drift, and just, you know, it's one of those stories. They fall deep in love after those rituals.
Evil satanic occult rituals it's kind of like Hinge almost, you know.
Yeah,
You never know, like you're gonna meet your soulmate at
Well,
the ritual.
Speaking of satanic rituals, since you set me up so well, while everyone was paying attention to the war and everything else, this shit's still going on in the fucking House of Representatives in Oregon.
Idiocracy.
All right, well, that's enough.
That's crazy.
Where was it? Where, did they gavel them in?
You know, if they're going to do that, we need to have Hulk Hogan run for president, get in there, and just like do his whole show that he used to do.
Well, you know, it's so funny because you hear so many people who are like the NPR listener on the left saying like, "Oh, idiocracy! Look, and it's true now. We have Trump, and it's WWE." Meanwhile, they bring that into the House of Representatives, and they're like, "Yeah, that is so amazing! Like, hello, that's how is that not idiocracy?
It's the
What are we
same people
doing?
that always complain about Trump is not a real statesman. I miss Obama because he was so presidential. It's the level of discourse that Trump drags the level of discourse down into the mud. Okay? He's embarrassing. He's stupid, he's idiotic, he's moronic, he's narcissistic, he's a bully, he doesn't know how to talk to people, and you know what? We just need to get the adults back in the room. Well,
like Daddy Trump.
the adults back in the room. I mean, what we just watched was basically a satanic ritual summoning demons.
Well, let's be honest. When they say fascism, they're just talking about mean words. That's literally all. That's the basis of it. It's not like, it's not. Oh, they're upholding corporate power. They're they're this. No, because Obama did all that and way worse. And Clinton, Biden.
Yeah.
It's just like, if you're gonna be a mass murdering psychopath, use good language. That's literally the basis of all of this criticism. It's just he uses mean words, and that bad.
Well, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier, that like lefties are so susceptible to surface level rhetoric. If I go out there and I say, and my speech is, I'm gonna run for office, and my speech is, hey, I'm the good guy, and my opponent, he's the bad guy. Like, that's all it fucking takes. Are you serious? Like, that's all it takes for these fucking people. It's like, well, but they told me that they're the good guys. I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Is this your first date? How old are you? Do you have mental disability? Of course they're going to tell you what they... of course they're going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Jesus, you look at what they do. Like Obama. Obama broke politics the same way that Trump did it, but in the reverse.
Right. They have the framework through the media of all these things that are supposed to be what the good people are doing, and then all the things of what the bad people are doing. So the politician, literally says, I'm the good guy, he's the bad guy, but also, says all those talking points that are brainwashing everyone.
Well, it's the same people that worship Marvel movies and Star Wars to the bitter end. It's all about like that surface level good versus evil. And I do want to say, Tyler, that's a really good impression of Mom Donnie you just did. Because that's all I see whenever he's like, you kind of did it with the eyebrows too. I think it's just like, I am a good guy and we're going to be good and they are bad.
His hand gestures were like Newsom too. I think he had the same coach.
Oh, totally.
He was doing the both hands moving all the time thing.
Newsom's laying low right now. I haven't heard much about Newsom ever since he got threatened by Tom Homan that he was going to drag him to jail.
Well, he did challenge Vance to a debate. Like,
That's
debate me, bro.
So, I mean, my political instinct is to say, just ignore this fool.
Oh, hell yeah.
Ignore him, you know what I mean? I mean, or you could go the other way. Trump would be like, Trump would ignore my advice and be like, I'll take you down. It's going to be a great event. We're going to get a lot of viewers. You're going to be able to get your people. I'm going to get my people. And then it's going to be a good show and everything. It's like, no, Trump, stop doing that. He took that debate with Biden early and he was like, I'm going to take him out. And I didn't think that Trump did very well in the debate. Well, actually, he didn't do very well in the debate with Kamala, surprisingly. He did pretty good in the debate with Biden, and that did take him down. But at the same time, why take that debate? Arguably, that debate was the reason why Joe Biden got dropped out, and that debate happened way earlier than was normal, or was regularly would happen. And so Trump took that debate. Biden was already beat. Don't take that debate early. Why would you want him to drop out? And then you have Kamala, who nobody knows, but, she has the intersectional credentials. She was arguably way harder to beat than Biden. I thought that was a little bit of a strategic mistake. And I just want to point out, like, MAGA as being a cult, that's kind of like, both sides are basically just yelling at each other. You're in a cult. No, you're in a cult. No, you're in a bigger cult. No, you're in a worse cult. Um, I like to critique my own side, and I really wish that the left would critique their own side. You got some people that will do it, like as much as I hate him, like Kyle Kalinske will, or like Bill Maher will. But God, I have no problem saying things that I think that Trump did wrong. I'm not a complete like I'm sitting here saying I'll try to defend Trump on something, especially with the last week, with the bombings. And I'll say something like a little bit more good faith, like I'll be like, it's really important that Trump, shows peace through strength or something like that. I'll make a comment like that, and people will be like, "Oh yeah, how does Trump's cock taste?" And I'm like, dude, oh my God, I can't just have an opinion without you like going there. Like, I'm not a I'm not a bootlicker, for Trump. I really am not, even though I love him and he can do no wrong.
Yep. Yeah, we'll see what the next week or two brings. I feel like it's going to be maybe a slow news cycle for 1 week, and then something else is going to pop off.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
think a lot of moves are being made.
Yeah. Well, hopefully Trump can. I was going to say one last thing though about the before we pop into our Cuck of the Week segment. I was going to say about Trump. I mentioned his legacy. He wants to protect his legacy, and I think there's one thing he really wants. Two things I wanted to mention about it. Trump's actions. I know the Israel thing is a very complicated and controversial and heated type of discussion, whether or not we should be allies with them, or if we do too much for them, or their foreign influence, or AIPAC, or Epstein, all that stuff. I get it. But one thing that we can trust Trump. I guess the big question in the room is basically, is Trump bought and paid for? Or, is he blackmailed or bought and paid for by Israel? Is he just doing what Israel wants him to do? That's kind of the big like elephant in the room type question. But what I think is that Trump is trying to protect his legacy. And I think we can expect Trump to act in that type of self-interest. And one of the things that he did in bombing the nuclear facilities was he destroyed Obama's legacy. That was I really have a pretty serious disdain for Obama. And so leaving the whole Israel thing aside, that just obliterated. It was dropping a 30,000-pound bunker buster on Obama's legacy. It's dead. It's gone. Obama's whole legacy has been obliterated by Trump. And Trump is going to protect his legacy, and I think he really, really wants the Nobel Peace Prize. And so if he can do this 12-day war and get a significantly long-lasting ceasefire, I think that he might have solidified his Nobel Peace Prize. And I want to see that for him. I think it's a little bit of it's a very Trumpy type thing it's like kind of like one of those, it's just like an Academy Award or something like that. It doesn't even matter in a way, but I think he really wants that Nobel Peace Prize. And I think I would go so far as to say he would even called Bibi and was like, hey, I really want this Nobel Peace Prize. Please just stop for 3 years. Just give me 3 years or something, and then go crazy,
Well,
So-
how perfect would it be if he got it at the end of his 8-year presidency, split in half, versus Obama getting it before he was even president? That would be a scriptwriter kind of
Yes.
appropriate ending there. But
Yes. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. We'll keep an eye on it for sure. I do have a cuck of the week clip.
Oh boy.
Do you got
Cook it
one,
up.
Silas? Do you have one? I guess we watched yours earlier, Adrian.
I do have another one that I
Okay.
can throw in there.
Cool. All right, I'll go first. Maybe you guys have seen this one.
talking about this morning.
No! 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 Dog! Fat boy! Fat! No!
Oh my god.
The eyes. It's
Yeah.
always in the eyes.
Sanpaku.
Jeez.
That's the big whites in your eyes that makes you crazy. It's a Japanese word.
That's pretty
Wait,
good.
what's the word?
Sanpaku.
Sanpaku.
It's that crazy look with the extra white in the eyes. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got one. This guy might be acting, but I think either way, it qualifies.
I am literally shaking right now. I went to a casino for the first time in my life, and while I was there, I tried the buffet and their wild caught bison. As I was driving home, my stomach started going crazy, so I stopped at the reservation on the side of the road and ran into the management office. Some lady comes out from behind a desk and she's like, "Can I help you, sir?" And I said, "Yeah, I need to use the bathroom." And she's like, "Are you part of the tribe here?" And I explained to her I was assigned the wrong origin at birth, but I identify as Native American and I go by Walking Tomahawk. And she was like, "Wait, so you're a white guy?" And I said, "Excuse me, bigot? Don't dead feather me." And it's like, what is wrong with these transphobes that they like go out of their way to misindigenate us? It's like, what's so hard to understand that trans indigenous Native Americans are indigenous Native Americans? Like, why do I even have to explain this in 2025 to people? So now I don't have anywhere to use a bathroom because I'm trans. And it's like, now I'm suffering in my car. And I have no bathroom that I can use that matches my national origin. Because people want to be bigots and mean transphobes. Just be nice, people. Just be nice.
Well, this one's I should have played first because it's not as entertaining as those ones, but it is also relevant, and it was pretty ridiculous to see this play out.
The president of the Senate, where you serve, he also went to Yale. I assume that he knows your name is Alex Padilla. Your response to him calling you Jose?
Oh, he knows my name. He knows my name. Look, sadly, it's just an indicator of how petty and unserious this administration is. But he's the vice president of the United States. You think he'd take the situation in Los Angeles more seriously? You think maybe he'd take a moment to talk to some of the families who have been impacted, have been terrorized, to feel what's really going on the ground? I mean, you saw him shaking hands with Marines, but did he listen to the Marines? Because we have, the report after report of the Marines, so many of the Marines themselves that don't want to be there.
Yeah, well, he was just basically crying over being called Jose. Come on.
What a cuck.
You could just laugh it off. It would be a political masterstroke if he was just to laugh it off and say, and maybe come back and call him a hillbilly or something like that, Like, okay, roast him back, dude, and he's going to get on JD Vance for being inappropriate and immature when this guy literally has like a 3-year-old tantrum meltdown at a press conference and gets arrested. It's such theater. Such fake outrage.
He called me Jose. He called me Jose.
Kind of look like a Jose, dude.
Well, I guess Jose Padilla was like a terrorist. Because I was like, where have I heard this name? Was he a baseball player? And Jose Padilla, I don't know the specifics of it, but It was like maybe 10, 15 years ago. So, but he didn't bring that up. He's like, he called me a terrorist. He thinks all Mexicans are terrorists.
Oh, well.
Well, Cuck, I'll give my vote. Even though the trans native was hilarious, but the boomer Sampaku,
Crazy Eyes
over there is gonna take my vote.
I got
Same.
one.
Yeah, that's my vote too.
All right, I got one. Silas, you're up at you got like 3 or 4, I think. That's my first one. My first W. Well, fellas, it's been wild. It's been crazy. But I just wanted to leave everybody with this one last ethical sentiment. Just an axiomatic, fundamental political strategy. And that is to always accuse your opponents of what you yourself are doing. And with that, I will bid you adieu. Gentlemen, pleasure as always.
Until next time.
Good night.